Um, so Sisi Ni Amani was founded based on some observations that were made about the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And post-election and election-related violence are not new to Kenya. Kenya has experienced this in almost every election that it's had. But what was new and unique in 2007 and 2008 was the speed and the breadth to which this violence spread throughout the country. Well, I'll keep talking anyway. So one thing that really enabled violence to spread, and one thing that generally is an enabler of violence, is communication, and the type of communication that takes place around violence. So in 2007, 2008, what was new from previous elections? Well, information and rumors and fear spread quickly, and more quickly than ever before, through the use of mobile phones. And specifically through the use of text messaging, which enabled messages to be forwarded and spread quickly throughout the country. And these messages not only contributed to fear and rumors, but also incited people to fight, collected lists of names, and organized for weapons distribution. So with Sisi Ni Amani, what we did is we said, well, violent actors were really successful at using this tool, this new channel of communication. And they had the results that they intended. But how can we learn strategically from what they did that was successful and what they did to leverage these technologies to actually work from the opposite end? So we started working with local peace leaders in different communities, and we said, okay, communication is inciting violence. And we started having conversations in focus groups and conflict analysis to understand how did communication incite violence in these particular communities. And then using this information, we strategically asked, how then can we instead be prepared for the next election to use mobile phones and text messaging to promote peace? So what we did is we are actually now working with PrePelt in the newest upgrade of technology on their Bumigo platform, and have a system where people in Kenya can subscribe from their phones and provide demographic information about where they are, their gender and their age, and the language that they prefer to receive messages in, and they're entered into our database. These subscribers then receive messages that are created in partnership with local communities and local peace leaders. And these messages range from civic engagement and civic education to violence prevention messages during points of conflict. So right now we have 30,000 subscribers in our two pilot areas, which is Nairobi's Eastlands and Narok in the Rift Valley. And we're just starting to scale up and make this available to people throughout the country. But when we designed the communication strategy, it's not just about using the technology and just about the mobile phone. It's about understanding the communication context where we're working. So in order to know how to target our messages, we first have to understand, if we look at pathways to violence and trajectories of violence, who's important? Who do we need to reach? When we look at violence, we often think about young men who often end up perpetrating violence physically. But before it gets to them, there's a lot of information flow and communication flows that take place. And so you have other important actors, like hawkers or women selling things on the side of the road, who play a crucial role in this communication infrastructure that can lead to conflict. Once we understand who's important to reach, we need to understand in which situations and at what times we need to reach them, what information is going to be important and actionable to them, and help them to think twice about their options and their actions. And then finally, how do we package this information in a way that they're going to listen and that it's going to make sense to them? So I'm going to really quickly show you a little bit about the process that we go through. So after doing work with local peace leaders on conflict analysis, we moved to focus groups and co-creation of messaging with members of our target groups in our target communities. For example, working with young men who participated in the violence last time, and they work together with our teams who walk them through possible situations, and they actually come up with messages that they think would have impacted them or could impact someone in their situation. After the focus groups, we go on to driver's analysis. We look at what each message is saying. We can't usually send them in their raw form. They might say something like, "We're watching you and the police are coming to get you." Sisi Ni Amani can't send that message. But what we can do is we can say, wow, there's a fear of imprisonment or consequence of violence. So we look at what the messages are talking about and analyze what are key drivers to call upon when we're working with that group. Then we refine the messages based on maintaining the drivers, managing risk, whether a message can be alarmist to the community, so that's impact risk, or whether it could have risks for the organization, and we make sure it's reaching the appropriate target group, whether it's young men or people in the transport industry. And then we come up with these final messages based on situations, threat levels, and the audience that's being targeted. So just to give an example of how this works, this is the post-election violence nearby to Nara, which is one of the areas where we work, and where people often do fight with weapons like bows and arrows. So a recent land conflict emerged there over a contentious boundary on a particular farm, and we were able to send a message to two groups of men who were armed with weapons ready to fight and not listening to the local mediators. The message basically said, let us resolve all boundary issues peacefully, for only with peace can we find lasting solutions. Let us keep peace in Mulot. The men left the field and actually went to seek mediation at a local office. And our vision as Sisi Ni Amani is that during this next election cycle, we'll be able to continue responding to issues as they emerge and getting people information that's actionable to them at the right time so that they can think twice about their options and their participation in negative actions. And I just wanted to wrap up because I know that the topic of this forum, while we can focus on Kenya and we're here and this election is really important, is also in a broader context of how we can use communication in humanitarian crises, whether it's conflict or natural disasters. So I just wanted to ask, as we do our work and as we learn crucial lessons implementing here in Kenya, what does this mean for response to humanitarian situations? What lessons can we offer now and in the future? And the key takeaways that I would say is that there's really a need for communication preparedness. And I think right now, we're at a place in the world where we can kind of predict. We know which places are likely to experience some type of conflict. We also know that there are areas that experience repeated natural disasters. And if we can focus in the long run on these places, and first of all, creating communication knowledge, not just coming in empty-handed, but understanding what are the existing communication infrastructures. How are people communicating negatively, and what can we learn from that? And how do people access information and build into those systems? And if we can have structures in place in advance, I think this is really critical because that also enables us to establish ourselves as a long-term source of credible information in those areas, which is really crucial in a time of emergency when information is circling around from all different sources. Being already established as reliable is extraordinarily important. And then finally, I would say that once you have these tools in place, they're also very useful for prevention. We have this SMS system, which was originally designed to respond for violence, but we're now able to use it in the Sauti Yetu debates program to ask people what are their needs that they want politicians to address and start policy dialogue. We're able to use it to send people information about registering to vote. So I think setting up those structures can be useful to provide people with information to prevent the negative consequences of natural disasters and to prevent violence, and then also to respond. So I'll end there. I think I've used my time, but thank you very much.